The last transport ship lifted off from the burning colony world of Velthara Prime, carrying the final group of consortium officials to safety. Ambassador Kethrix watched from the viewport as the planet grew smaller, its atmosphere already turning orange from the spreading plague fires. She felt nothing but relief. The colony had been a mistake from the start, built too close to the dead zone, too close to the territories claimed by the species that all civilized beings feared. Behind her, the other ambassadors of the Galactic Consortium whispered among themselves. There were 12 species represented on this ship. The insectoid Crix, the crystalline Valori, the aquatic Morthine, and 9 others who had pooled their resources to build Velthara Prime. Now they were abandoning it, along with the 3 million colonists who could not be evacuated in time. "We had no choice," said Ambassador Yolthan of the Valori, his crystal body pulsing with nervous light. "The plague spreads too fast. We cannot risk our core worlds." Kethrix nodded slowly. The consortium had voted unanimously. The colony would be quarantined, no ships in or out. The plague would burn through the remaining population, and then the planet would be sterilized from orbit. It was the only logical solution. "What about the distress signal?" asked a young aide, her voice trembling. Someone responded. They said they were coming to help. The ambassadors exchanged uncomfortable glances. Yes, someone had responded, but the signal had come from the dead zone. It had come from them, the monsters, the Deathbringers, the species that every civilized being in the galaxy learned to fear from the moment they could understand language. "The humans," Yolthan said the word like it was poison on his tongue. "Let them come. Let them catch the plague. Perhaps it will solve 2 problems at once." Kethrix said nothing. She had met humans once during a failed diplomatic mission. They had seemed so ordinary at first glance. Soft bodies, no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. And yet, every species in the consortium had stories about them. Stories of impossible violence. Stories of worlds burned and fleets destroyed. Stories of humans who kept fighting long after any sane creature would have surrendered. The consortium had decided long ago that humans were too dangerous to integrate. They were contained in their small corner of the galaxy, watched from a distance and avoided at all costs. If a human ship appeared in consortium space, every station locked down. If a human asked for trade, the answer was always no. They were monsters, and monsters could not be trusted. Kethrix wondered if the colonists down on Velthara Prime knew that their government had abandoned them. She wondered if they knew that help was coming, but it was the wrong kind of help. Help from monsters. 3 days later, the first human ships arrived at Velthara Prime. They were ugly vessels, all function and no beauty. They did not match the elegant curves of consortium designs. They looked like machines built for war that had been hastily converted for other purposes. Dr. Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the medical frigate Hope's Light and looked down at the dying world below. The readings were bad. The plague had spread to every major population center. Millions were infected. Thousands were dying every hour. "The consortium really left them," said Captain Marcus Webb, his voice heavy with disgust. 3 million people, and they just walked away. Sarah nodded. She had stopped being surprised by the consortium's behavior years ago. The galaxy saw humans as monsters, and monsters were not supposed to have feelings. Monsters were not supposed to care about strangers on dying worlds. But humans had always been bad at being the monsters everyone expected them to be. "Launch the medical pods," Sarah ordered. "I want field hospitals set up in every major city within 6 hours. And get me a secure line to the colony's remaining leadership. Tell them help has arrived." The human fleet descended on Velthara Prime like angels of mercy. Within hours, cargo shuttles were landing everywhere, unloading medical supplies, food, water purification systems, and portable shelters. Human doctors in hazmat suits walked into plague zones that the consortium had declared death sentences. Velthorn colonist Miraketh watched from her window as a human shuttle landed in the central plaza. She was dying. Everyone in her apartment building was dying. The government had told them to stay inside and wait for evacuation, but no evacuation had come. Only silence. Only the slow spread of purple lesions across her skin. The shuttle doors opened and humans emerged. They moved quickly, efficiently, setting up strange machines and unpacking boxes of supplies. One of them, a tall female with dark skin and kind eyes, approached the building entrance. "Is anyone in there?" She called out in accented but clear Velthorn. "We are here to help. We have medicine. We have food. Please, let us help you." Myra opened her door. She did not have the strength to be afraid of monsters anymore. The human doctor introduced herself as Dr. Amara Okonkwo. She examined Myra gently, taking samples, running tests with devices that beeped and hummed. Then she smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Myra had ever seen. "We can treat this," Amara said. "The plague is aggressive, but we have seen worse. You are going to live." Myra started crying. She could not stop. 3 days of terror. 3 days of waiting to die while her government fled and the rest of the galaxy looked away. And now these monsters, these terrible humans that everyone feared, were telling her she would survive. "Why?" Myra managed to ask. "Why did you come?" "We are nothing to you." Amara paused, considering the question. "Where I come from," she said slowly, "we have a saying. The measure of a civilization is not how it treats its powerful members. It is how it treats its weakest, its most vulnerable, its forgotten ones." She took Myra's hand gently. "You were forgotten. But we remembered." Across the planet, similar scenes played out thousands of times. Human doctors worked 20-hour shifts, collapsing from exhaustion only to wake up and return to work. Human engineers repaired power grids and water systems. Human soldiers provided security, keeping the peace as desperate colonists crowded around distribution centers. The plague was brutal, but human medicine was brutally effective in response. They had drugs that the consortium had never seen, treatments that seemed almost magical. They had experience with plagues that made this one look like a minor infection. Humanity had faced extinction-level events on their homeworld multiple times. They had learned to survive anything. Dr. Sarah Chun worked for 72 hours straight before someone forced her to rest. In that time, she had personally treated over 200 patients. She had watched 11 of them die. She remembered every single name. "The mortality rate is dropping," her assistant reported when she woke. "We are at 32% and falling. Another week, and we should have this contained." Sarah nodded. 32%. Nearly 1 million dead already, with more to come. It was a tragedy beyond words. But without human intervention, the mortality rate would have been 100%. 3 million dead instead of 1 million. It was cold math, but it was also the truth. The consortium watched from their safe distance. They watched human ships come and go, bringing more supplies, more personnel, more hope to a world they had written off. They watched their own colonists, citizens of their own government, being saved by the species they called monsters. Ambassador Kethrix received reports every day. The humans were not just treating the plague. They were rebuilding infrastructure. They were setting up schools for children who had lost parents. They were counseling survivors, helping them process trauma. They were doing everything that a civilized species was supposed to do. "This changes nothing," Yolfin insisted during one council meeting. "Humans are still dangerous. This is probably some elaborate trick." "A trick?" Kethrix asked. "They have lost 47 of their own people to the plague. 47 humans dead, trying to save our colonists. What kind of trick is that?" Yolfin had no answer. Months passed. The plague was defeated. Velthor Prime began to recover. And slowly, carefully, the colonists started asking questions that made the consortium very uncomfortable. Why did the government leave us? Why did the other species not help? Why did only the humans come? The answers spread through the colony like a different kind of plague. The truth about how the galaxy saw humans. The truth about how the consortium had voted to let them die. The truth about who really cared and who did not. Mira Keth stood in the central plaza on the day the last human medical team prepared to leave. Thousands of colonists had gathered to see them off. Many were crying. Many carried signs thanking the humans in languages that the translators had to work overtime to process. Dr. Amara Okonkwo found Mira in the crowd. They embraced like old friends because that is what they had become. "You are really leaving," Myra said. "What happens now?" Amara smiled sadly. "Now you rebuild. You heal. You remember." She paused. "And maybe, someday, you tell the rest of the galaxy what really happened here. Tell them that the monsters were not so monstrous after all." Myra watched the human shovels lift off. She watched them rejoin the ugly functional ships in orbit. She watched those ships turn and accelerate toward the dead zone, toward the territory that civilized beings feared to enter. She thought about everything she had been taught. Humans were violent. Humans were dangerous. Humans were monsters who destroyed everything they touched. But she was alive because of them. Her children were alive because of them. Her entire world was alive because monsters had cared when no one else would. Myra turned to face the crowd. These were her people, survivors of the worst disaster in their colony's history. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. "The consortium calls them monsters," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "But when we were dying, the monsters came to save us. When we were forgotten, the monsters remembered. When every other kind departed, only the monster species cared." She looked up at the sky, where the human ships had already vanished into the darkness between stars. "Maybe it is time we asked ourselves who the real monsters are." The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, they began to nod. They began to talk among themselves. They began to question everything they had ever been told. And somewhere in the vast halls of the consortium, the ambassadors felt a chill run down their various spines. Because the truth has a way of spreading. The truth has a way of changing everything. And the truth about Velthra Prime was only the beginning. The humans returned to their territory, as they always did. They did not ask for payment. They did not ask for gratitude. They did not ask for the galaxy to change its opinion of them. They simply went home and waited for the next distress signal, the next disaster, the next chance to prove that monsters could have hearts. Because that was who they were. That was who they had always been. Not the destroyers that the galaxy feared, but the helpers that the galaxy had never bothered to know. The measure of a species is not how it treats the powerful. It is how it treats the forgotten. And by that measure, humanity was not a monster species at all. They were simply the only ones who remembered how to care.